the other one's very important as well. And that's a brilliant example of co-design with the Indigenous community. And I know that Maureen Lewis and the Western Australian Mental Health Commission is a part of the podcast, and I've got to tip my hat to them. In amongst all the projects that they're responsible for, they thought social emotional being was very important for Indigenous communities. So they made a nicely amount of money available and said, we're going to fund social emotional being through the Aboriginal medical services. And then they sat down with our state coordinator of all the AMSs, and they talked about how they would use the resource to empower Aboriginal community controlled health services. So 5 sites were funded across the state. We were actually asked to evaluate, so we've sent our staff in to not evaluate in a punitive way. It's been a quality improvement way and supporting the whole process. And those different AMSs, there's some fundamental things that are uniform or the same, but there's also differences, and we need to nurture those differences. The whole process of colonisation, characteristics of communities are different, so their Aboriginal medical services reflect that. I think the co-design of that, and I'm optimistic that it'll be continued to be funded, but that I always hold that up as a classic example, because sometimes people say, oh, that's all very well and good in theory, but how can governments co-design with Aboriginal people? And this is a good example. It's sharing the power and supporting Indigenous self-determination.